Okay, so this is a sample of a student. Student's research paper. People's perception on the effects of social media on marriages. Okay, so you have the acknowledgement section and then abstract. You're going to write these sections later on. Then you've got the table of content has to look like this. So you can just type all these contents for now. Later on, when you have completed writing your research paper, you can jot down the page numbers, right? So I hope that you have done this.
Ma'am.
Sections A, B, C, and D.
Ma'am.
Yes.
এখানে কি টেবিল অফ কন্টেন্টে ম্যাম আমরা কি টেবিল ক্রিয়েট করে দিতে পারবো?
You can, yes, you can provide in a table form, or you can just type it like this. It's up to you. You can put it in a table if you want, but I think it's better not to show the table because we don't write the content in a table. All right, so just write it like this, type it like this. Later on, jot down the page numbers, okay?
Okay, ma'am.
So you can see introduction. Okay, there should be background as well. I think she missed the background. So introduction, second section will be background, then research questions, then hypothesis, then methodology, then data interpretation and analysis, then summary of the research findings, then recommendations, and should be a conclusion as well. This is missing, conclusion, and then references, and then appendix. Okay, so there are some mistakes here, so just don't copy this one. Follow the research paper organization handout, which I've given you. Okay, so introduction. Actually, she had included introduction and background section together, but she didn't write it. Okay, so you can see some of the references are given, same reference, so borrowing information from the same source. So for the in-text citation, only the last name of the author, or authors, but no initial of the first and middle name. So you must provide the in-text citation. If you don't, if you just directly borrow information without acknowledging the source, then you will be plagiarizing. Okay. Okay, background. Okay, she has background here. Okay. But she didn't mention it in the content. Then research questions. So you're just going to copy and paste the research questions that you had written or that I had corrected in your research proposal. But please make sure to change the tense. You should write, instead of writing this research plans, you should write this research paper has investigated the following research questions. So change the tense for these. Then the hypothesis section, then you've got methodology. Okay, methodology again, change the tense. Methodology, remember to extend. You need to expand a little bit more than what you had written in the research proposal. Please give a little bit more description of the respondents and also the survey questionnaire that you are going to use as a tool to collect data. Try to justify why you're using a survey questionnaire to collect data. I mean, you should mention that this tool is appropriate for this type of study, and in other studies, the researchers have also used a survey questionnaire to collect data. Also, it's more appropriate because of the time limitation as well. Okay, and then you've got the data presentation, data interpretation and analysis. So it should be data interpretation and analysis. Okay, so you can see the percentage. For each of the survey questions, you'll get a percentage. And you're going to show it. You have to form charts like this. It can be a pie chart, it can be a bar graph, line graph, anything. And then label them as figure, what it refers to. So for each of the survey questions, you should have a chart like this, and then you explain. You have to describe what is happening in that chart. Okay, and you can also, for some of the survey questions, some of the results, you can compare your results with previously done research as well, which you will be mentioning in the background section. Okay, so here's another chart. Okay, so just scroll down. Okay. So you can, this is a bar graph. And then description. Remember that your data interpretation, it has to be original. You cannot copy from other students' work at all, because the Turnitin report will just show, and you will lose marks. So you should have, all your data should be original. It should be fresh, and then when you interpret the data, it should also be in your own language. It should be new. It should be original. Okay, so in this part, this is not a Turnitin report, so it's not showing the similarity index here. Okay, so in the summary section, you summarize your findings, and also you need to mention your hypothesis as well. So in your hypothesis, you had written the expected results, that what you expect to find based on the research questions. Now, when you have your data, actual data, when you analyze the results, and you'll be able to know whether your actual findings, actual results actually matched your expected results. So you may find that some of it matched, some of it didn't, or you might find that all your expectations matched your actual findings, or none of it matched. So whatever it is, there's nothing wrong or right about it. So whatever your results are, whether it matched your hypothesis partially or completely, or none of it matched at all, please mention that again in the summary section. You must mention the hypothesis, because there is a reason why you had written that section, hypothesis, because we always have some predictions, but we don't know the true value of our predictions unless we do a systematic research and find out the truth. Right, so that's why you need to find out how much of your expected results were true, or how much it matched, and how much it didn't match. So please mention that in the summary and discussion section. And then, as I also mentioned, in the recommendation section, do not suggest the solution to your topic problem. You do not provide any solutions. What you do is you suggest, the recommendation section is for future research. You can recommend or suggest what should be done or could be done in the future research on the same topic. So whatever, you can mention your research gaps first. Normally this section is called limitations and recommendations. So you mention your limitations, what you could not do in your research, things that you had missed out. Also, you can explain why you had missed out. One of the reasons could be time limitation, and then this situation. And then, give some recommendations to future researchers if they are interested in continuing this type of research. All right. And then conclusion, just recap the results and just conclude. And then you have the reference section where you provide full references of the information, of the sources that you had borrowed information from. Okay, so you must have minimum like 5 references. You have to, 5 is very minimum. Normally when you do a research, we read many articles actually. Because remember that when you write a research paper, academic paper, this is not a literary piece of paper. It's not something that you write out of your imagination. It is factual. We try to collect data in a systematic way, analyze it. So it's something which is not make-believe. It is something we're trying to describe some facts. okay, based on data. So that's why lots of reading is important. Even when you provide a definition for any of the concepts, you have to read. You have to say what other people have said. It's not, the definitions will not come from your own head. These definitions or explanations have been given by other researchers. Okay, so that means that you have to read a lot, so provide as many references as possible. And then you have the appendix section. Appendix section will have 4 parts. Appendix, so you can label them as A, B, C, and D. So A will be the first draft of your research proposal. B will be the modified or corrected version of your research proposal. C will be the first draft of your survey questionnaire. And D will be the modified version of your survey questionnaire. Now, since you're going to submit online, I will create a separate assignment for appendix section. So in one of the assignments, we'll submit the research paper, the complete research paper from the cover page to the reference list section. And then in a separate assignment, classwork assignment, you're going to submit the appendix. All right? So clear, everyone?
Yes, miss.
Okay, now I'm going to show you a sample of a Turnitin report. Okay, so can you all see the page?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you can see a lot of highlights here. All these highlighted sections refer to similarity. That means that probably they haven't been properly paraphrased. Now, some of them, actually, acknowledgement here, it can be because, using the name and all that. This is acknowledgement. I won't be deducting marks for the acknowledgement, but abstract, definitely your abstract should be different because you're all working on a different topic. And as I said, that your writing should be original, so you should write in your own words. So, yeah, so this one is okay, actually. There's a little bit of repetition here from other sources, but it's still okay. Okay, then table on content, this one can show similarity because all of you are going to follow the same thing. So this part is still acceptable. And then you've got introduction. So here, introduction and background is where similarity can show a lot. Because now what I will do is that if the similarity is a lot, in that introduction and background section, I will not be deducting marks much, but because as I mentioned before, paraphrasing is not that an easy task. You need a lot of practice. So since all of you are still in the practicing, or you're just learning, so I will consider for introduction and background section, right? So, but please try to paraphrase and summarize appropriately. And please do provide the in-text citation. So you can see here a lot of plagiarism. Okay. Background here again, because probably the paraphrasing hasn't been done properly. That's why it's showing. You can see the highlighted part is showing like this. Okay, and these sections can also show similarity because since all of you are following the same format. Okay, hypothesis, hypothesis should be different actually because your research topic is different. Methodology can show similarity because you're probably using the same language. Anyway, now data interpretation analysis, this section is the most important. There should not be, similarities here at all, or maybe just a little bit. So this part is the most important section because everybody's topic is different and your data should be fresh and new and original. So the way you analyze it should also be fresh and original. So if I find that a lot of similarity is shown in this section, then definitely more marks will be deducted. So here you can see there's some similarity. Okay, these are okay, you can see. It's original, that's why there's no highlights here. Just a little bit. So this is good. Okay, so let me scroll down. So you can see the different charts, different figures have been used for all the survey questions. So this is how you're going to write. Okay, and then summary of the research findings. This is also original, you can see, the highlights are less. So that's good. And then recommendations, this one probably the student had copied from somewhere else. And the conclusion is okay. And then reference still okay. Okay, so and then the appendix section, you can see appendix section can show a lot of similarity because all of you are following the same structure. That's why appendix section should be submitted separately. Okay. Now, at the end, when we submit the papers in Turnitin, the report is shown, the summary of the report is shown at the end, and this is how it looks like. This is what we are going to check here. For this student, the similarity index is 27%. Now, as I mentioned that we accept up to 25%, then if it's above that, then we do start deducting marks. But here 20 is still okay. So it's shown red because 25 would be okay, but 27 is 2% high. Now here you can see the colors, it's given. So 25% similarity was actually taken from students' paper submitted to North-South University. So a lot of things were similar to the students' papers. And then the different colors are shown like this. 1% from different internet source, another 1%, another internet source, then less than 1% is from another internet source, less than 1% from another internet source. Student paper submitted in another university. Okay. So basically that's how it looks like. Okay, at the end, the summary of the report is given this way. All right, so that's why you have to be very careful about borrowing information from different sources. Idea is that you cannot, should not copy other students' papers at all, right? So it should be original. So try to paraphrase, summarize, and quote. Oh, summarize and paraphrase in your own words. And if you are quoting, provide the quotation mark. And for each of those techniques, please provide the in-text citation and the reference list based on APA rules. So is it clear, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
So any questions regarding the research paper?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so when you get back your survey questionnaire, then please start collecting your data. Okay, before the holidays, Eid holidays, I will discuss about the presentation because you have to present your paper. It will be an individual presentation. You will form slides based on your research, and then you have to show the slides and present. You'll probably get like 4 to 5 minutes, not more than that. After that, I will be asking some questions. So it'll take a few classes, actually, 3 full classes definitely, because it will be individual presentation. So I'll give you the dates for the presentation. After these holidays, we can start the presentation. So we may need some extra classes to complete the presentation. I mean, if there are extra classes, then it's not that you have to, all of you have to attend, only the students who are going to present. So I will divide all of you into three groups. So maybe like 13 or 14 students can present in each class, all right? So I'll talk about the presentation later on. I'll give you guidelines as to how you're going to present and how you're going to prepare the slides. Okay, so clear, everyone?
Yes, miss.
Okay, now I'm going to move on to another topic that usually comes in the final exam. Today's topic is argumentative passage analysis. Normally, in a normal situation, you get 4 questions. The first one is on argumentative passage analysis. The second one is on incorporating sources, which we had done last week. In the last class, I think that was on Sunday, right? And then the third question is on data interpretation or graph analysis. And the fourth question is response writing. So all of them are, for 10 marks, total is 40 marks. Now for online, it will be a little bit different, but we have to cover all those 4 topics. All right, so after today's discussion, I will take another quiz next week. Okay, so let me share the screen again. Okay, I think I'm going to post this handout in the stream section because this is also a photo of a picture that I had taken. It's not that clear. So let me, first of all, let me just post the handout in the stream section. Okay, so can you all check in the stream section, please? Did you all get the handout?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can you all see the screen? Can you all see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is the sample. So I've already given you the sample. If you can open it, because this one, is it clear? I'm sharing the slide, sharing the screen. Is it clear? Can you all see? Can you all see everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we'll discuss.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay, if we are not able to complete, we can also continue next class. But next week, I will be taking quiz 3 on any one of these topics. All right, so this is how argumentative passage analysis looks like. So a passage will be given. It is an argumentative passage because as you had already done argumentative essay, you know that you have the thesis statement usually states the writer's viewpoint. So whenever someone writes something, they have their own viewpoint, what they want to talk about, what is the main topic, what is it that they want to express. And then there will be supporting points, a lot of explanations or descriptions given to support the author's viewpoint. And then there can also be a counter argument. Normally, in an argumentative essay or passage, there should be some counter arguments, because if there are no counter arguments, then it kind of becomes too biased towards the writer's own viewpoint. But there should be some counter arguments as well. And then there's also another part which is called a warrant. Now, warrant is actually an additional support. Sometimes when the supporting points are not strong enough to convince the audience into believing in the writer's viewpoint, then an additional statement is needed. That is called a warrant. The warrant actually connects the supporting points with the main statement. This statement is also called the claim statement, or the thesis statement, you can say. So the warrant sometimes is needed when the supporting points are not enough to convince the readers into believing in the writer's own viewpoint. So warrant is there, and then there's a conclusion. Okay, so you'll be given a passage like this, which will consist of a few paragraphs, and then there are 4 questions that you have to answer. Okay, so the questions are, the first question will be identify the claim of this editorial and its type. So the claim is basically the writer's own viewpoint. It's more like a thesis statement. So we had done the claim statements. Remember, there are 3 different types of claim statements. Do you remember? What are the 3 claims? Are you all here, everyone? What are the 3 claim statements that we had done previously?
Claim of fact, value, and policy.
Yes, claim of fact, value, and policy. So in these passages, there will also be a claim statement. That means in the claim statement, the writer will express his or her own viewpoint. That means what is it the writer wants to talk about in the passage. The main viewpoint is there in the claim statement. So the first question is you need to identify that claim statement. Normally it's in the introductory paragraph, but sometimes it can also be at the end. In fact, in this passage, the claim statement is actually at the end, but normally you'll find it at the beginning. Okay, and then question number 2 says, what supporting points are provided for the claim? What kinds of support are there? All right, so you have to identify the supporting points to support the claim statement. Remember that the main objective for writing an argumentative essay or passage is that the writer wants to convince the audience or the readers into believing in his or her viewpoints. So after the claim statement, there has to be supporting points. The supporting points will provide logical explanation or information that will try to support the writer's viewpoint. Okay. Now, there are actually 2 kinds of support. One of them is called evidence support. Evidence support is more like factual support. Factual support where you get like information that is accepted, that can be accepted by the general public, like things that have been published in newspapers or magazines, or statistics are given, data is given. Those are evidence support or factual support. And then you have the motivational support. Motivational support refers to any type of information that can kind of stir the emotion of the readers, and the reader will instantly believe in it. Sometimes these information can be, emotional, so it motivates the readers into believing in the claim statement, right? So they are not factual support, but the information is written in such a way that it kind of stirs the inner emotion of the readers. They feel from inside that the claim must be true or logical, and so motivational support is another type of support. So basically, in the argumentative passage, there will be examples of 2 types of support. One is evidence support, and the other one is motivational support. You have to identify them and make a list of them. All right, so question number 1, that is identify the claim of this editorial, will carry 2 marks. And in fact, you have to identify also, you need to state what type of claim it is, whether it's a claim of fact, value, or policy. You have to mention that as well. So it carries 2 marks. Then the second question, what supporting points are provided for the claim? What kinds of support are they? It bears 3 marks. So you should at least 3 evidence support and 3 motivational support. But it also depends on the passage. Sometimes some passages may have more evidence support and less motivational support, but then some passages may have more motivational support and less evidence support. For example, this passage actually has more motivational support than evidence support. Okay, so it carries 3 marks. So you should at least list up to 6 supporting points. Okay. The supporting points can be equal, 3 evidence and 3 motivational, or it can be like 2 evidence and 4 motivational, depending on which one is more you find. So you have to really go through the passage very carefully and identify these supports. Okay, then the third question is, what is the warrant in 1 sentence? So as I explained, that the warrant is an additional statement that kind of glues or connects the supporting points to the original claim statement. So as I said, that if the supporting points are not enough to convince the readers into believing in the writer's own viewpoint, then you need a warrant sentence, and warrant will be given in the passage, in these type of passages. So you need to identify that, you need to go through the warrant would look something, it will kind of reflect the original claim statement. It could be the original claim statement can be restated in a different way. That will be the warrant. So you need to identify that. Just write one sentence. And so this question number 3, carries 1 mark. And then the last question is, evaluate the overall effectiveness of the given passage using your own words to answer in 1 or 2 integrated paragraphs of at least 100 words. Okay, and some hints are given here. Possible points you can discuss are the relevance of the topic or claim, the quality of the support, the acknowledgement of counterargument, the organization of the passage, the quality of the language, etc. So the 4th question carries 4 marks. It says, evaluate the overall effectiveness of the given passage. Now, here, when you write this, when you answer this in 1 or 2 paragraphs, should be like 100 words. You do not summarize. Evaluating the overall effectiveness does not mean summarizing the passage. If you summarize, you're going to lose marks. When you write evaluate the overall effectiveness, it means that you have to give your critical analysis of the passage. That means, what do you think about this passage? It's not summarizing at all, because when you summarize, you do not provide your own opinions. You do not provide your views about a passage or a written source. When you evaluate the overall effectiveness, when you critically analyze, then you are going to give your own opinion regarding the passage. Now, here some possible points are given, and you should just follow this. So in the question, this will be indicated. The first one is, discuss the relevance of the topic or claim. That means, after you have found the claim, look at the claim, look at the topic, and in 2 or 3 sentences, write whether that topic was an effective topic or not. How effective was the topic? Do you think that the topic or the claim was something worth writing about? Or was the topic a very trivial type of topic that the writer did not have to write an argumentative passage about? So you give your own opinion. What do you think about the topic of the passage? Do you think it was an important, a significant topic to discuss, talk about, or something very trivial? How effective was it? So talk about that in like 2 or 3 sentences. Then the second point you can talk about is the quality of the support. So once you have identified the support, the evidence support and motivational support, write a few lines on the quality of this support. Do you think that the support was strong or weak? Was it effective to support the claim statement, or were they weak? Write a few sentences on that. Also mention whether there were equal number of evidence support and motivational support, or whether there were more evidence and less motivational, or more motivation and less evidence. So mention that as well. So a few sentences on the quality of the support. Then the following point is acknowledgement of the counter arguments. So usually an argumentative passage or essay should have counter arguments. Sometimes the counter arguments can be missing. So please read the passage very carefully and identify whether there is a clear counter argument or not. In this passage, in this example, actually there are no counter arguments mentioned. And that is actually one of the weaknesses or drawbacks about this passage. So you need to identify whether there are any counter arguments or not. If there are, then mention it, that it's clear, and so the passage is effective. If there are no counter arguments, then you should mention that that's one of the drawbacks or weaknesses of the passage, because of the lack of a counter argument. And then the following point is organization of the passage. So write a few lines on that as well. Whether the passage has been well organized, or a lot of things have been repeated, or the organization is not so good. Give your own opinion about that. Just see whether uh, there's unity and coherence in the passage or not. So write a few lines on the organization of the passage. Then the final point you can talk about is the quality of the language. So what type of language has the writer used in writing this argumentative essay? Were they appropriate? Were they effective? Were they not effective? Mention that in relation to the topic, whether the language was enough effective, significant to clearly explain the topic or not. Write a few lines on that. So if you just follow all these points, you can get 4 out of 4, you can get full marks. But if you just summarize the passage, you are definitely going to lose marks, right? So please be careful about when answering the fourth question. Okay, so is it clear, everyone?
Yes, Miss.
Okay, now we're going to read this passage and then we're going to look at the answers. Okay, so here the sample, the answers already given, so you can follow this sample, the answers, and write your own answers when a different passage will be given. Okay, so I would like someone to read the passage. Passage is called Dickensian Democracy. So it's an interesting topic. It's about this woman. It's about this woman's case, how she suffered. Her name is Beverly Dubias. So the passage is about her. And it's about her, but she's an example actually of what the writer is actually wants to say. The writer's claim statement is something different, and the writer has used the information about this woman to prove his point. Okay, so I'd like someone to read this passage out, please. You can open it from the stream section so that you can see it clearly. Would like a volunteer, please? Who would like to read it out? Testina Hawk, would you like to read it out?
Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yeah, please read it out.
Dickens' Democracy. This part, stripping convicted felons of the right to vote is a slap at America's democratic ideals. Many states are backing away from this policy, understanding at last that voting rights are in fact basic human rights that should be abridged only in the rarest circumstances. That lesson has yet to penetrate the state of Washington, which has created a form of disenfranchisement that is straight out of Oliver Twist. Last week, an article by the Times' Adam Liptak introduced us to a disabled woman named Beverly Dubois who lost the right to vote because she could not pay about 1,600 of charges that were assessed in connection with her marijuana conviction. The debt is growing rapidly because of the interest charged by the state. Ms. Dubois, who served 9 months in jail, has paid her debt to society. But until she settled the one to the state, she is stripped of her rights as a citizen. Disabled in a car accident, she can send in only $10 per month. At that rate, she is likely to die before paying off the debt. Several states permanently marginalize ex-offenders by saddling them with unfair charges and fines that are supposed to help pay for public defenders, drug tests, halfway houses, and other services. But Washington leads the pack in dunning impoverished offenders. People who commit certain crimes are even charged for having their DNA registered in the offender database. In addition to devastating poor families that can barely feed themselves, these fees push ex-offenders even further into the margins of society. And Washington's policy of stripping people of their right to vote until they can cough up enough money to pay their unfair charges is morally outrageous.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Okay. So very briefly, tell me, anyone, what is this passage about? What is it that the writer wants to point out?
The unfair treatment towards the citizen of Washington.
Sorry, can you repeat again?
Like the unfair treatment of the state of Washington towards its citizens.
Okay, the unfair treatment of citizens. Okay. Yeah, you can say that. So what is this? Okay. Yeah, so the writer gives this example of this character, Beverly Du Bois, and how she has been treated. In fact, the writer's main viewpoint is about taking away a citizen's right to vote, because every citizen has a right to vote. And when that is taken away from them, it's considered morally outrageous. Okay. All right. So that's the writer's actually main viewpoint, that it is a basic human right that everyone has a right to vote, and if it's taken away, then it is considered immoral, you can say. And the writer supports his viewpoint by, especially by focusing on this character, Beverly Du Bois, how she had been treated. So when you read about her case, how do you feel? Do you actually feel for her troubles, all the sufferings that she had gone through? Do you feel anything, or it's just a piece of information?
Yes, ma'am, we can feel her troubles.
So yeah, you can feel her, the way she had suffered, actually, right? All right. Okay, so let's look at all these questions and see how the answers have been written. Okay, so identify the claim of this editorial and its type. So which one do you think is the claim? Which sentence can be the claim statement? As I mentioned, it is actually towards the end. Claim should be, usually is at the beginning in the introductory section, but here it's actually in the last paragraph.
The last line?
Yes, the last line, right. So here the examples, the answers are given. The claim is the last sentence. Washington's policy of stripping people of their right to vote. Okay, and then there's some information missing. Ellipsis mark has been used. Is morally outrageous. And what type of claim is it? When you use strong language like that, morally outrageous, what type of?
Claim of value.
It's a claim of value, right? Okay, so this is exactly how you're going to answer the first question, all right? If it's a long sentence, you can use ellipsis marks like this, or you should write down the whole sentence and then mention what type of claim it is, whether it's a claim of value, policy, or fact. Okay, so that carries 2 marks. And then the second question is, what supporting points are provided for the claim? what kinds of support are they? So here, I'm just going to go through the answers here. Answers to question 2. There are several supports to the claim. Some of the evidence support are as follows. So here a list of 3 evidence support is given and the paragraph number is given. So in bracket, please provide the paragraph number. I mean, you don't have to write the whole sentences. You can just write down the main points of these sentences, right? So number 1 for evidence support is the story of Beverly Du Bois and her troubles. This is an evidence support because Beverly Du Bois's story had been published. So when something is published, we take it as a fact. We take it as an evidence which kind of gives logical explanation or it's information that the public will accept, right? So that's an example of evidence support because it had already been published, so it is factual. And then charges and fines imposed by some states for services. This is in paragraph 3. Again, this is also evidence support because these fines and charges are imposed, and this is not something that people will just make believe. This is something that actually is a part of a rule in that state, that charges and fines are imposed. So this is also factual or evidence. And then the third one is many states are backing away from this policy. This is also evidence because this is also happening. So it's kind of like a counter evidence support because so it's written negative, but and you don't have to write anything like that. So this is also evidence support because it's negative because it kind of because what the writer is pointing out, it kind of shows that yes, that it is true that these type of laws exist and some states are backing away from this policy. So it is also an evidence support because it is actually happening. That's right. Okay, and then some examples of motivational support are given here. 4 of them. There are actually more motivational support. Now again, the story of Beverly Du Bois with its pathos. So the story of Beverly Du Bois is example of evidence support, but at the same time it's also motivational support because this story has been published. That's why it's a factual support, but it's also motivational because once you read her story, you do feel for this character. So the moment you start reading about her, you actually feel her troubles, her sufferings, and your inner emotions are stirred. So it says with pathos. Pathos actually mean your inner emotions. You're motivated into believing in this type of story. Even if there were no evidence support, you would still believe because the story itself is very touching. And that's why this is also an example of motivational support. Okay, and then the reference to the misery seen in Dickinson's novel, Oliver Twist. Okay, this is given in paragraph 1. Charles Dickens, have you heard of Charles Dickens? Have you heard of this name? He had written the novel.
Yes, ma'am.
So British novelist. So he had written this like a few centuries back, actually. So very descriptive. His novels are very descriptive. So
A Tale of Two Cities, ma'am. Yes, I have read it.
Tale of Two Cities, and there are many other Great Expectations. There are many famous novels that Charles Dickens had written, and a lot of them have been, a lot of them have been used. Movies have been made on his novels as well. So have you watched Oliver Twist? It's an old movie.
No, ma'am.
Anyway, the story is about an orphan boy, actually, and his sufferings. So Charles Dickens usually gives a lot of description. If you see his original book, they're very fat, very, very descriptive, consisting of many, many pages, because he gives a lot of description about the social situation during those times, especially the working class in those times during the 18th, 19th century. A lot of children used to work, underage children used to work. So this story is about this orphan boy who lived in an orphanage, about his journey, about his adventure. So you actually feel for this character, just like you would feel for a Beverly Dubois, you'd also feel for Oliver Twist. That's why the reference to the misery seen in Dickens's novel Oliver Twist is also an example of motivational support. Okay, and then devastating poor families that can barely feed themselves, and then unfair charges and fines. These information also kind of stir your inner emotions, and it's enough to convince you into believing in the writer's viewpoint. That's why these are also examples of motivational support. So, 3 to 4 of this support is enough. So total, you should list them up to 6. You can write more, but 6 is enough because question number 2 carries 3 marks. Okay, so it says other uses of motivational language are dunning, impoverishment, offenders, stripping people of their rights to vote. So these are motivational language that has been used as well. Okay, and then question 3, what is the warrant? Warrant here is voting rights are in fact basic human rights that should be abridged only in the rarest circumstances. Now, this is in the first paragraph, actually. So normally a warrant would probably be towards the end, and the claim would be, at the beginning. But here it's kind of reversed. The warrant is given at the beginning and claim is at the end. And you can see that this statement kind of reflects original claim statement. So this is a warrant statement, warrant sentence. So it carries 1 mark. And then finally, the last question, evaluate the overall effectiveness of the given passage. Okay, and the possible points to discuss the relevance of the topic or claim, the quality of the support, acknowledgement of counterargument, organization, and quality of the language. So this is how it's written. We'll just go through it very quickly. The passage is successful and effective in its argument. The topic is very relevant in terms of the broader issues of democratic rights and importance in its relevation of a particular form of abuse. So here you can see in 2 sentences, the writer has written that the topic is a very significant, very effective, important kind of topic for discussion because it refers to a broader issues of democratic rights and abuse, particular form of abuse. So it is a topic that is worth discussing about. And then the support is very effective in the form of motivational appeals, and central story of Beverly Dubois is quite touching. It also uses a lot of emotional loaded language to make its points, such as unfair and devastating. Comparatively, it is lacking in factual support, but what it has on Dubois and the state's actions is sufficient. So even though there's a lack of evidence support and more motivational support, the writer here, the answer here is given that the motivational support are enough to convince the audience because the motivational language has been used and it's kind of well written to convince the audience into believing in the writer's viewpoint. Now, then it moves on. However, the passage lacks any clear counterargument, which is a notable shortcoming. So you have to also write about whether there is a counterargument. This passage lacks that. So that is a kind of a drawback or a weakness in this passage. And then it talks about organization. It says the organization is clear with separate points developed in 4 paragraphs, though there is a bit of repetition in the final paragraphs. Okay, so that's organization. You can write how many paragraphs, there's coherent, there's unity, whether there's a lot of repetition or not, you can write about that. And then the last point here given here is the language. The language is clear and precise and particularly effective in the way many powerful and intense words are used to make the writer's point that this example of disenfranchisement is very unjust and against basic democratic principles, right? So if you just focus on all these points, then you can get 4 out of 4 for this last answer. Just do not write a summary of the passage, right? So you have to write your own critical provide your own critical viewpoint about the overall effectiveness of this passage. So is it clear, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions? So I will be taking a quiz. You can choose whether you want it on incorporating sources or argumentative passage analysis. We'll take it next week, all right? If you think that you need more discussion, then we can also do that in the next class. And then I can take the quiz next Tuesday. Okay, so you want to sit for the quiz on Sunday or Tuesday?
Ma'am, Sunday.
Next Sunday?
Miss, next Tuesday. It will be better.
Tuesday, Miss.
Tuesday, Miss.
Or which one do you want? Incorporating sources or argumentative passage analysis?
Argumentative passage analysis.
Today's topic?
Yes, ma'am.
So everyone agree? Okay. So in the next class, you can, if you have any questions, you can ask me. And I will also move on to topic number 3, which is data interpretation. And I'll take the quiz next Tuesday. Okay, so please respond to your names. Khandakar Akhtar Hamid.
Yes, ma'am.
Anik Vishwas Joy.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me just stop recording.